Hey, everybody. It's Jeremy from Jeremy.net. I am a comic book artist, writer, creator, self publisher, and I share my creative process here with you online. If you enjoy these videos, would like to get additional bonus live streams twice a month, you can become a Patreon subscriber for as little as $2 a month. Head over to patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI. If you'd like to get a free digital sketchbook, work in progress animated GIFs delivered right to your inbox, blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively, you sign up for my free newsletter at substack.com/@Jeremy. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comic books or free digitally on Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. That will forward you to my Amazon author page. And at the top of the show, I want to give shout outs to some new patrons. I believe that I mentioned before that I thanked Corey Kerr for becoming a new patron. But again, thank you, Corey. I appreciate that. Much love, just in case I forgot to give you a shout out on the stream. And as well, I'd like to thank Glenn Del Puno, great designer, artist, friend of the show, friend of life. Glenn, thank you so much for supporting my work and being a part of our art community here. So for today's live stream, we are going to do something a little bit different. I was watching a YouTube video by concept artist and art educator Hardy Fowler, and it was a really great video on value structure, and it really just it sparked a need for me to dive deeper in my own work. And that for me is the big purpose of looking at other people's work, looking at watching YouTube videos, educational art information, is just seeing gaps in my own knowledge and places where I can get better. So see, I see James is in the chat. Good to see you, James. Thanks for joining us. So there's a link in the live stream, in the description of this video, for the actual video. So if you guys want to go and check that video out, it's a short video. It's only 10 minutes. So I mean, honestly, you could watch it and then come back to my stream and still catch up with us. But the point is that he showed a bunch of his concept art, and he showed the value studies he does in order to structure structure the image. And the basic concept is going from almost like using atmospheric perspective, going from lightest being the background to darkest being the foreground, and usually the sky being the brightest light because the sky is basically a giant lamp. And he has shared a couple of different examples of his work, and him showing examples of doing this process. And what I wanted to do was pull up a couple of his examples, have them in reference, and then do value studies of other pieces of artwork. So I went and I pulled some artwork from some great illustration masters. Let's see here. I've got one by Harvey Dunn here. Let's see here. I grabbed a couple from Dean Cornwell because I was looking through this and I'm familiar with Dean Cornwell's work. I saw some pieces in a great museum exhibition in LA like several years ago. There's a great exhibition that I saw of a variety of illustration old masters, and Dean Cornwell, definitely his stuff made an impact and stuck with me. Then I also pulled, along with Dean Cornwell, some is this Mead Schaefer? I think so. And then a Howard Pyle that I wanted to look at. So I grabbed these, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some value studies of these master illustrations in the style that Hardy Fowler demonstrated in his value studies. And I think that this will just, in general, it'll help me in terms of, the next step after this is applying this and doing it with my own compositions. But I first want to see what it looks like, applying it to the compositions of some people. There are some amazing illustrators that already are probably doing this on a subconscious level. But then the next step is taking and applying it to my own. So let's see here. James says he was a bit sick last weekend, so he took some rest. It's funny. I didn't want to cancel today's stream, but it's more allergies than anything else, but I don't know if you guys can tell my voice is a little hoarse, and I was definitely kind of like sitting down like, oh, I do not feel 100%. But you know what? Drawing usually makes me feel better, so I'm up for it. So let's go. Herman's in the chat, says, what's good, G? What's good, chat? Like I said, allergies kicking my ass, but still, it's fun to sit here, hang out with you guys, catch up. Hossein's in the chat. Good to see you as well. So value studies. Let's see here. Let me pull this over to the side. And what I'm going to have to do here is, I think, turn that off. And let's just go to a normal white background. So I'm going to need that for doing these studies. So let's take one. Actually, I think what I need to do is select. And I could just take these two and drag them over. All right. So let's see here. Herman says, you feel you on that, but having slight headaches, sinus, but making it as usual. Yeah, I guess anytime I've noticed that whenever the temperature changes, whether it's going from warm weather to cold weather or cold weather to warm, it messes with my sinuses something fierce. Having a little tea, hopefully that'll warm me up sinus wise. See, Paul's in the chat. Paul Pate, how you doing, man? How's it going? Hope all is going well. So let's see here. So the main thing in starting these studies, I mean, I really love the fact that he breaks the whole concept down into such a simple approach, light to dark. And something that's interesting that I notice is we think of squinting to kind of help see our values and understand our values better. We think of that as something to do when we're drawing from the figure, when we're drawing from life, when we're out in an environment. You should do it when you're painting digitally. And the reason why I say that is because I'm looking and I'm starting with just looking at the sky on this. And I wish I had grabbed a version that was slightly higher resolution. Well, it's too late now, but I'm going to be breaking it down to values anyway, so it's not much point. It's not going to matter. But when I look at this and you would see it seems like there's a very wide range in value. You can very clearly see the difference between the sky and the clouds in this image, and it feels like there's a very large gap in value. But if you squint at this image I'm looking at now, the values compress. And the difference between the blue sky and the white clouds, it's very, very minimal. They're actually much closer in value than it appears, which again, that shows you the strength and the power of color. Color can very quickly deceive you. That's why working out the values is the important part, because they always say, value does the heavy work, color gets all the credit. Let's see here. Paul says he's enjoying the last days of summer. James says, values. Yeah, I remember having to do an assignment where I had to do value range squares. Wasn't really a fun assignment because of the subtleties. I wasn't used to it. Plus, it wasn't something I had much experience with. Yeah, you know what? Well, see, that's why I like the idea of taking. And by the way, I think I mentioned this at the top, But in the description for this video is the link to the Hardy Fowler video, because that's where I grabbed these black and white, the gray value studies, the silhouette ones from. So I definitely encourage you guys. I mean, hell, you could, I don't know if you want to have two windows up at the same time and have him on mute and scroll through, but point being is I just want to make sure you guys know that that's where I pulled those from, along with the Harvey, is this the Harvey Dunn one that I'm looking at? Yes, this is the Harvey Dunn reference. But the idea of, instead of just doing squares of values, to actually take an existing image from an illustration master and convert it to value, like, to me, that's a much more intellectually stimulating activity. Let me shrink this down a little bit more so I have some more room to draw here. Now, the real challenge for me is that I tend not to think in, you know what, maybe I should make the background dark. This way I can really, what I was going to say is that my tendency is to, I think so much in linear terms that I can occasionally, not occasionally, but I can frequently, like, I find it difficult to just break stuff down to flat shapes. So this idea of doing a study of value in this way, it benefits me both in that I'm having to think about shape much more than I normally do, as opposed to line and volume. So I'm working on both value and shape at the same time. But you know what? Actually, you know what? James brought up a good point. The fact that the value, he wasn't really that into the value studies of just doing squares that he had to do before. Anytime you can take an exercise that's boring and just find a way to make the exercise interesting. Like, if you take any exercise and combine it with a master study, it immediately becomes 10 times more interesting. Like, imagine doing a value study of, like, Gustav Klimt, who was somebody I considered pulling up for this. I just ended up going down the American illustrator route, but doing a Klimt study or a Michelangelo or what have you, doing those kinds of things based off of works that you find inspiring to look at, that's an easy route to making homework fun. So it's here. James says, when you light digitally, it makes shadows for you. You just have to adjust them. I'm not sure if I understand what you mean by lighting digitally. But I don't know what, feel free to elaborate if you wish, but I'm going to dive in here. Let me just make sure I'm not missing any more comments before we go further. Oh, like with Maya. That's what you mean. Like working in CG. Well, yeah, when you're working, you said like with Maya. Yeah, when you're working in CG, it's like, yeah, it does the whole thing. It's rendering all of it for you. It's just a matter of where you place your lights, literally. So yeah, that makes complete sense. Let's see here. Herman says, yeah, getting the value straight is everything. Also color, but if you keep it simple, you can drag out three simple colors using value. I mean, hell, I think honestly, I like a two color composition. But I think you can just go, like, you can either say 2 warms and a cool or 2 cools and a warm, depending on your environment. But yeah, you can keep it really simple and get a lot out of very, very simple colors. James says, I think it was too tedious since I had to keep adding value until I got it right. And yeah, I understood after I read the Maya part for 3D work. Yes. Yeah, definitely. 3D, well, I mean, that's why 3D is so popular. It does a lot of the heavy lifting for you. By the way, I can tell you as a cheat, if I wanted to just knock this thing down to black and white, all I need to do is put a layer over all of it, fill it with black or white or any neutral grayscale, and change it to saturation, and it'll immediately make this a black and white image. So meaning the reference, the Harvey Dunn reference. So let me just lock the transparent pixels and start by separating. This is one thing that I learned from John Messer when I took his perspective class, was that when you start doing a landscape type piece, the first thing you want to do is separate. You know what? I'm going to go with a hard brush on this. I realized I was doing some digital figure drawing earlier, and so my brushes were set for that. But I'm switching over to pardon me, my crisp digital brush. But anyway, step one, separating land from sky. The nice thing is then I can just go in and fill that in. And already you've made a big impact on the composition. Now I'm looking way in the distance. There's little figures. Oh, those are little tiny little buildings way in the distance. And then there's another larger building. I feel like as opposed to putting any detail in the sky at all, I should leave the sky white. And the first pass, like the first value down from the black value, from the white value, I'm going to start with the buildings that are in the background. This might be a little too light. Let's go one value darker. Okay, now I can already tell you my proportions are way off because I'm looking at how squat this building is. And I realize I'm drawing this building way down here. And I notice that the distance between it and the near top of like in the reference, it's near the top of the plane. So really, the building should be up here. And I think I just need to raise the ground plane. Let's say the ground plane should be probably, I put it maybe at a 60-40 instead of 50-50. And it looks like it should probably be about a 70-30. By that, I just mean the percentage of the ground plane, like the percentage of the overall composition that the ground is taking up versus the sky. So I'm just going to block that in there lightly. And I'm going to bring the ground plane up higher. See, this is the interesting thing. All I wanted to do was do a value study. And it can be challenging when you're doing value and then other things you suck at pop up, like proportion. But I can also look at it as this is a great chance to just work at improving at all of the disciplines that I need to improve at. It's a study. That's the whole point. I'm doing stuff that I'm not good at. It's practice. Yeah, Herman agrees in terms of like working on values. Says that's why it's always good to work in black and white. He says, I did that with charcoal drawings and made it easy when adding colors. And believe it or not, I was sketching with a charcoal brush the other day. Or I think it was even last night. Time is really messed up for me right now. Work's been busy. Still packing for moving. That's been busy. I'm a little loopy. Point being is that I was drawing with the charcoal brush that I was working with when I started this stream. And I thought for a minute, maybe I want to do my digital comic with with the charcoal brush instead of going for the ink look that I normally do. I'm not saying I'm definitely going to do that, but I hadn't really considered that before. And then just as I was sketching, I was like, I'm kind of liking this. It was giving me an interesting feel, giving me an interesting vibe. Let's see here. James says, I guess you can use form to make shadows, right? I'm thinking of contour lines. Yes, you absolutely can use form to make shadow. I mean, my whole thing is the way that I define form is, well, form is light and shadow describing the surface. And if you've seen me draw tons of cubes before, that's I'll use the values I have here on the screen. If you've got, let's say, the surface that's facing the light facing upward, that being your primary light source, and that's going to be white. Then you've got the side of a surface. Whoops. That'll be your midtone. Then you've got the surface that's facing away from the light. And that would be your shadow side. It's not a cast shadow, but it is the shadow side. So yes, the thing is, it's kind of a misnomer to say that shadow defines form. Shadow and light together define form. Because the light side describes which things are facing towards the light. The shadow side describes which things are facing away from light. In fact, it's better to say that light and shadow are components of value, and value describes form, because value tells you how quickly something turns. If the turn is a very, very sharp turn, it tells you that the form is a corner. Whereas, oh wait, hang on, let me undo. All right. Whereas if you were to let me just draw a circle that's kind of been, whoops, I keep forgetting this thing is too close in value to do that. All right. Whereas if I were to come in here like that with a shadow value and a light value, and then come in here and smudge it, a gradual change in value tells you that it's a rounded form or a soft turn versus a harsh or quick turn. So how quickly something changes in value also describes the form, if that makes sense. I probably should have left a little bit more space in there for more of the mid-tone to show through, because it's transitioning from dark to, it's going straight from the light to the shadow a little quicker than it really should. But you get the point here. I'm painting in just a simple sphere, and the value describes the changes. And let's say that I wanted to imagine that this sphere that I just painted in there, and it's a pretty crappy sphere, but imagine that this sphere is a lump of clay, and I want to stick my finger into the clay and make a hole in it. Well, I would just think of like a little bit of value that I'm sticking in there. I really should probably be doing this with a soft brush instead of the hard brush that I'm using. Bring that brush size down. How small do I need to make this brush size? It's too small. Point being is that if I were to push, I'm thinking of using the value as me pushing a hole in the clay. So this is what I mean when I say, the value is describing the form. And if I really want to make the rim around that opening pop, I can come back with a little bit of light around the edge. It almost gives that effect like a belly button. You get nice and small here. Well, no, that's about as wide as it's going to get. It would probably work better if I had gone a little bit slightly darker tone. But hopefully this gets to what I'm trying to describe, which is that it's not that shadows define form. It is light and shadow together, meaning value. Those things describe the way that a form is changing, whether it's a quick change with hard edges or a soft change with rounded edges. Let's see here. Let me go back up. It's here. Herman says, it's a strong overcast piece with minimum color. Me focusing on shapes has made it easier for me to see some things quickly. Let's see here. Oh, he says, you good, bro. Take it easy. Glad you're here. Appreciate it. Let's see here. Oh, and then when we were talking, I guess, about the brushes, he says, I see an artist do that with Moon Knight in terms of doing comics with a charcoal pencil. He says, gives it a more traditional feel, like you can touch. I wonder if you're thinking about Greg Smallwood. He's a comic artist who I really, really like his stuff. He did The Human Target with Tom King, and that book blew me away. And I started reading his Moon Knight run, and I just haven't finished it because life be crazy, and I haven't had time. But yeah, he's a guy who makes digital feel traditional. I really like his work a lot. And he also said, yes, using light and shadow to determine value, the fun part. He said, and the fun part is doing the details, like the subtle transitions. Yeah, because once you block it in, it's like you've chipped out a sculpture that, like a rough version of a sculpture. Then doing the details becomes the fun, Like a lot of times I'm not really super into doing detail and noodling. I want to get those big, cool, massive parts. But adding those subtle accents when you get the major forms really working, then it becomes like, ooh, yeah. It's like a nice harmony to a melody. Let's hear. Dylan says it makes sense. Thank you, Dylan. Herman says, I was wondering if anybody else makes that Windows 10 transition to Windows 11. He says it sucks. I've been spending like $200 to $300. I have a small laptop to keep me current with Windows 11. My desktop I'll use offline. Well, I am on Mac, so Mac has its own sets of problems. I'm not one of those people who's like, well, you should get a Mac. I'm like, no, Macs, I like them because they work for me. They feel like they're a workhorse. they feel like they can do. It feels like you have like the fact that people hate being trapped in the Apple ecosystem. But what I like about it is that when you're using the Mac products, they all work together seamlessly. And so the same thing that a lot of people consider a criticism of Apple, for me, that's one of the things that I like it. But that's not, I don't say that to say that's why everyone should get on Mac. I'm saying that's why this system works for me. And for people who absolutely don't care about having tons of stuff working seamlessly and they're just being cost sensitive alone is a reason enough to be like, I don't want to use Mac. I get it. The shit's expensive. All right, I totally lost where I was with the value studies. So let me get back in here. I think as opposed to really going deep with this, I'm probably just going to sort of rough in the figures and then move on to another piece of reference that I pulled. Now, see, the interesting thing here is that you've got a dark value here, and then you've got another part of the hill that's slightly lighter. And in a way that kind of contradicts the value structure that Hardy Fowler laid out with the going from dark to light foreground. Now, part of that is that this is a strongly backlit piece, but I kind of have to decide: do I want to throw a lighter area in down here, like a lighter part of the hill, and then have it fade back to black, or not? Yeah, screw it. Let's go for it. Yeah, there were a couple of pieces from some illustrators that I pulled that I was that I pulled for reference for this exercise. And I just looked at them and I was like, the values are too complex. It's going to make it hard for me to do this. I'm going to go darker for this part down here. And then I'm going to go with black. And I'm also seeing just how beautifully this composition leads the eye. Like the signpost, not signpost, the fence post for the barbed wire fence here in the front just leads the eye right to the girl, to the boy, to the barn. It's like the composition goes up and then rolls down the hill into the distance. But at the same time, the composition also kind of goes from the pole. It kind of brings you up around the side if you follow the fence into this, and then kind of goes down with the girl to the building. I think that your eye could flow in a couple of different ways, because the way that I first looked at it, my eye flowed just up following the figures. I think that's something that's natural. I think in most art, we're drawn to human figures. So if we see people walking, our eyes are just naturally drawn to them. If we see a face or anything like that. Okay. Now let's throw in the boy and the girl coming down the hill. Let's just go a couple of values, a couple steps darker value wise. Let me see how dark that is. It's not too dark. Go a little darker. When we were talking about details, Herman said, I can't help it. I need to noodle. I needs to noodle. Well, you know what? I think that's true for all of us, is that all of us have a thing that we fixate on, a thing that a particular aspect of mark making that gives us joy. Whether it's like some people love the swooshing gestures and they love finding the rhythm in figures. For me, I love boxes and blocking out volume. Um, some people love to noodle in the details. Some people love just color, just playing with color, and what's interesting is I find that the artists who I see have the best sense of color, they are naturally good at value. They don't even need to do the types of studies that I'm doing. They get value. They really, really get it. And I'm going to go a little bit darker with this guy, the girl. They really, really get value naturally. And it's not like, oh, they don't, it really is. They don't need to do what I'm doing. They understand it on kind of an intuitive level. And they don't, I'm sure that there are probably a lot of people who are masters of colors who are like, no, I busted my ass to learn how to do all of this. So if you're one of those people, I hear you, I see you. But I feel like there are a lot of artists who just have a great inherent, if you have a great inherent sense of color, I feel like you probably have an inherent great sense of value. And I mean, for me, honestly, I don't think there's anything that if I had to say that there was something that I was inherently good at, I would say it's exploring narrative in images. But I don't even know if my instinct is not to congratulate myself on anything. Is to just try and operate from, like, I mean, when I look at how many great artists there are in comics, for me to say that I'm good at anything feels like just a blatant lie in comparison to like the amazing people that work in the comics industry. And I'm not saying this like I'm fishing for compliments. This is just like, there's just so many great artists in comics. And I say that with admiration, not with any type of spite, or, I mean, maybe I'm a little envious, but for the most part, I admire people that make comics because it's just so damn hard. Let's say the thing that has interested me most, because that's probably, like I said, the same thing with value studies. You can make any study or any homework more interesting by applying it to the things you enjoy. And in fact, I didn't get a chance to grab a piece. One of the things I considered doing when I was going to do this study here was going to be to grab a Jack Kirby illustration and try to do a study based on that. Well, I'll tell you, the one thing that I have learned just from doing this study is I really need to work on my silhouettes and my proportion, because I kind of blocked these in, but they feel so far off of the proportion of the actual reference. Like, I really, the female figure literally is taking up, you can't see my hand. I got to put a little thing on here. This is an argument for me having another camera just over here, so you can see my hands when I'm on it. But I put my hand next to the screen only to comment that the woman, the girl figure in here, she's literally like the height of half of the composition. maybe slightly less than 50%, but not by a whole lot. Whereas in mine, I have her really tiny in here when she really should be, and she's almost centered. So my sense of composition is really, really wonky. Um, my sense of proportion. Well, see, that's the thing. Composition is about the overall placement of elements in a piece. Proportion is about the individual. Proportion is specifically just about relationships. We usually think about the figure in proportion. But when you talk about the figure in proportion to another figure, in proportion to a building, in proportion to the entire picture plane, in proportion to picture plane elements, proportion of an entire piece is composition. And so it makes sense that because I struggle with proportion, it makes sense that I would struggle with composition. Now, normally I think that composition does tend to be one of my strong suits when I'm composing a piece, but it's not so much that it's one of my strong suits, so much as it's something that I enjoy working at until I have a composition that really works for me. But I'm not going to belabor the point. The fact is I butchered this composition in my quest to get the values right. So even if this value study is interesting, it's still barbaric compared to the actual composition. Like I want to come in here and do a study specifically of composition and really work on getting the relationship between elements in the piece correct. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these and I'm going to group them. And then I'm going to turn the layer off and pull in some more pieces. And I'm going to do another one. And we're already at, we're at 40 minutes. We got time to do one more, or at least start one more. Let me scroll back up and see what's going on in the chat. Let's see here. Get my old man glasses on. Let's see here. Herman says, I do like flat stuff as far as value only when it has good silhouette with details to contrast it, like Frank Miller or John Romita Jr. when they do their inking. And you know who I love Alex Toth because he does such a great balance of strong silhouette that reads really powerfully while still giving you, just enough detail. Love me some Toth. Which is probably the reason why I love Chris Somney. I'm never going to stop singing his praises. Herman says, yeah, you got it for the most part. Just drop down in value what you see. And then, like you said, you can noodle a bit. Yeah, I mean, part of this also when you're doing studies is that unless I were really to sit here and spend, part of this is to improve my sense of value. But for a quick study, it kind of makes sense to just go in and sort of like roughly pick, a bit of what you need versus what you don't need. I feel like I could have unified all of these values a lot more by keeping the sky and then everything else. Like the way I did it, it feels very, very patchy. And I feel like, here, remember I told you in the beginning that I could cheat and immediately see all the values? Well, let's take a look. Now, my whole thing here where I've got, the sky, the buildings in the background, the figures, the hill, and they all feel very lumpy and separated. I'm going to put a layer on top. Let's fill this layer with black. And then let's change this layer to... I'll change it to color. It'd do the same thing whether I did saturation or hue. All of them will change it to black and white. So when I do this, you're going to notice a couple of things. Number one, my entire value structure was way too high key. Yes, I was trying to do atmospheric perspective with a light background and things getting progressively darker. But even with that, I should have started with a much darker color because the whole value key, it's a much lower key than I did by starting with a white sky. Secondly, remember how I mentioned that the difference between the clouds and the blue in the sky, when you squint, they almost disappear. This squinting is basically turning on a black and white filter. But now when you look at this and you compare not just how much I butchered the value, like now looking at this, when I squint, let me turn on so actually, you know what? Let me put this below. So one more note on here, which is that now notice not only that the sky is much more unified, but all of the values in here, it almost reads like one big silhouette. I probably would have been better off coming in and making, like, really going like, what is my sky value? What is going to be maybe the almost black? I probably could have picked this value and made a big silhouette of everything else in this dark value, and then slowly separated them. Because what I'm getting at here is that these values between the building and the figures and the environment and the fence posts, these values are much closer together than I did. I separated them, yes, I was trying to separate them clearly, but they are much, much closer together. And it all makes the piece read much more like one big, strong silhouette. There's a lot more subtlety, and I came in with a sledgehammer. I'm not going to do it right now, but it is worthwhile for me to, you know what? I am going to do it. I'm going to go counter to my instinct. My instinct, originally I was about to move to a different piece and go and do another one, just so you guys can get some variation. But that's not how I study personally. And I should be honest with how I tend to study. The way that I study is I do a piece, I look at it, I see what I did wrong, and then I go back and I do it again. This is kind of goes back to the thing I was saying last week about how I could just work on the same comic book cover for like 3 months if that's how long it takes me to finish. Doing this study, what I want to do and what I'm going to do is just go back and do what I just did, but do it again and try to do it better. So I'm going to hit some comments real quick, and then we're going to take another stab at this same piece. Because I think that's how you really learn, is just by doing and repeating. It's a try-fail cycle. You try, you fail, you learn from the failure, you try again. Making art is the edge of tomorrow. It literally is just getting murked over and over and over, and like learning like at one tiny little thing that you're like, oh wait, next time I need to remember that. Literally, I need to go watch that movie again, because now I'm thinking of that movie as a metaphor for all creative practices, and it's mind-blowing. I enjoyed the movie, but I never really thought a whole lot about it, other than the fact that it was a cool twist on, Groundhog's Day type, Groundhog's Day applied to an action movie. But now thinking of it as a metaphor for the creative life, not just the creative process, not just one creative piece, but like the entire life of an artist, I'm like, wow, that's mind-blowing. That might be my new favorite movie now. I need to go watch that again. All right, comments. Let's see here. Herman says, I stay in black and white. It's the color thing I have to focus on. I envy people that can just throw any color down, or a multitude of colors like it's nothing. I have to keep it limited. Yeah, I'm a limited palette person too. Like, honestly, I like to do things like mostly black and white and 1 or 2 colors. So here, Paul says, Herman, had to make that upgrade for my day job. Crashed my computer. Had to get a new one. Wow. That sucks. Yeah, getting trying to get last thing you want. I did have some tech issues. As much as I go on and on about me enjoying the Mac ecosystem, I had some tech issues with my work computer a month back, and it literally like took me offline for like 2 days, and just having to get on video chat with IT and having them trying to go through and work through. And the problem all relates to a third-party plugin that we have to use. And I was just like, if it wasn't for this thing is like messing up my workflow. So James asks, do you think mediums that are underutilized help draw the eye as far as comics go? I have one that was done in watercolor or pastel. Should you try to learn from artists who use non-traditional mediums, or just appreciate their approach for its uniqueness? That is a highly individualized question. You can't give a blanket answer for that, because it depends on your interests. If you are somebody who enjoys working in other mediums, if you enjoy experimenting, then you absolutely should try to bring out mediums, using unique mediums, whether it's, watercolor, painted comics in general. And even to go digital, instead of drawing digitally, maybe doing an entire comic with like Unreal Engine, where you build the models in the beginning and then you're just posing them for each panel. I mean, there's lots of other ways to do comics in an unconventional manner. Hell, making puppets you use for a stop motion film, but instead posing the physical puppets and making like a fumetti, like, photographing them and making a comic that way. There's lots of ways to do it. And I think that doing it and simply saying, I am choosing this medium because I want my comic to stand out, versus I'm choosing to do something different from the way other comics are made because I love this other different process. The second one is the one that I think will lead you to more success. Because I think if you're just saying, I need to stand out, and you're picking an unconventional medium, if you don't love working in that medium, it's going to be an uphill climb and you're creating more work for yourself for no reason. Whereas if you're standing out simply because you enjoy doing something different, then I say that's a positive and you should lean into it. So hopefully that is I think that's, because I remember there's a couple of answers over the past few streams where it's like, I'm wishy-washy. I don't have a clear thought on that. I'm trying to get back to being clearer in what I really think about certain answers, and being clear about saying, when it's a question that is one size does not fit all. So it's also a matter of your personality. And also it's a matter of what your own strengths and weaknesses are. If you're trying to do a different medium, but there's something else that you really are stronger in, do the thing you're stronger in. Unless you don't enjoy that. Usually we tend to enjoy the things we're strong in. But if you're doing something you're strong in and you really hate it, and that's another reason to maybe try a different medium. James mentions, I haven't really used pastel before, but that could be fun. I mean, hell, you could go, first off, you go the Bill Sienkiewicz route and intentionally do a piece. You could make an 8-page comic and intentionally say, over these 8 pages, I'm going to do each page in a different medium. Or you could say, I'm going to do each panel in a different medium and use it as an excuse to try out a whole wide variety of mediums and just see how it looks. Do it for fun. You might decide that you might come up with a whole new thing where you're like, you know what? I'm not going to use one medium for my thing. I might use one medium for one set of characters and one medium for another set of characters, or one medium for one environment, one for watercolor for underwater scenes, and then digital or acrylic for scenes on land. You might decide to do flashbacks in oil paint and present in pencil or traditional brush ink. We sometimes forget that this is art, and art is supposed to be creative. It is hard to make a living as an artist. So I think you should pursue what lights you up creatively, and try to find a way to make that profitable. And I say that only because it's not that I'm saying follow your bliss at all costs. I'm saying if you're only going into it with business, then go do something, make something other than comics, because there's lots of better ways to make money. And then still make comics for you. Make the thing, carve out time to just make something that excites you and brings joy to your life. Because at the end, there's no guarantees whether you're going to be successful or not. There's people far more talented than me that still struggle to be successful making comics. So there's no guarantees. So at the end, all you're going to have is a lifetime spent. And you can either spend it doing something that you really enjoy, you can spend it doing something you really hate. And we all need to eat. We all need to make a living. So do what you need to do to make a living. And with whatever time you have left, spend it doing things that bring you joy. I think that's a good one. I'll stand by that. Paul says, this painting, now that you're breaking it down, it's like an optical illusion. I don't think you should feel bad about the proportions. Well, you are right about that, in the sense that I probably did start drawing it. When I look at my sketch actually does feel like if you space the people out, that feels like what the proportions should be. Versus if I go back in here, go on this layer. Like that's probably a little bit closer to what's going on here, but also yeah, that actually does make a big difference. Part of the exercise is trying to capture the feeling of the art that I'm pulling for reference. Well, here, I can just merge that down now. Let's see here. Paul and Herman were talking about some of the IT stuff with the computer issues. Oh, now Herman did say, interestingly, he said, I'm in over my head as a sense, but I'm preparing just in case, so wish me luck. I'm going to tell you this. A buddy of mine gave me a great tip in terms of ChatGPT as tech support. And I've tried it myself with some technical issues that I've had for trying to fix a couple of different things. And it really does work. So, I mean, everyone, everyone hates AI when it comes for their job. But when it comes to using it for somebody else's job, to take someone else's job, I'm all for it. So when it comes to me using AI to do tech support stuff or figure out some technical things or crunching numbers for things that I want, I'm all on board with that. So all I'm saying is it's worthwhile to open it up, type in the model number you have and the technical issues you have, and ask it for solutions. It actually is pretty good at helping you create sort of a step-by-step problem solving issue, with these issues. So I'm gonna throw that out there. Let's see here. And I see Byron is in the chat. Says, hey, people. Hey, Byron, how's it going? Let's see here. Herman says, yeah, it's overcast, and you can see the subtle light reveal from the shadow and the skylight. And he says, we also use the clouds we don't see as a shadow technique from the subtlety we see on the ground and on the characters. And that's funny. I didn't even really think about the fact that let me turn off this light layer. I didn't even think, I just thought of the hill as, because the sun is coming, like it's setting and it's from the left very strongly. I just felt like the hill was dark because this part's facing away. And then you get to a point where it flattens out, and you're getting more light, and then it's dark again as it faces away. I didn't think about this or interpret it as sunlight filtering through clouds. And to be honest, I'm still not necessarily sure that that's what it is, but I think that that's a very, very real possible read on it that I completely missed. And that also changes because that also changes your interpretation of what the form of the ground is doing versus how far. I mean, it is definitely they're coming down a hill and it is flattening out. But even if it's flattening out, the added effect of having light filtering in between the clouds, I think also, it changes my interpretation of the value structure, I think in an interesting way. Let's see here. I mean, it's a very complex piece. And it also reminds me that I've only done a couple of outdoor drawing and painting classes. When I was taking in-person classes with Carl Ganas, he would do a couple of times a year, he would do a workshop where he would take people out to do landscape drawing and painting. And I feel like I really needed to, or I should lean into doing that on my own, because I think drawing in nature is great for studying value. And I don't do it nearly enough. I've done it a handful of times in my life, and, I need to get out in nature and draw more. Let's see here. Herman says, you got this, bro. In time with me, I will do more studying, just trying to get through this month and hopefully a smooth computer transition. Let's see here. Mighty Geek Studios says, and great to see you again. Says, sometimes black and white presents a better story. I genuinely do love black and white comics. The reason why I mean, yes, it's cheaper to print black and white. So as an indie creator, I lean that way. But I've always loved black and white comics. And there's definitely certain artists like Sean Gordon Murphy. He's somebody who he has worked with amazing colorists, but he is one of those guys who I really actually prefer his work uncolored. And there's a few artists like that. I'm blanking on I'm pulling any names at the moment, but there's definitely some artists that I really, really like just their black and white work. Let's see here. Let's see here. I'm just going to skip over some of the that's not really IT talk, but let's see here. Hey, Gary Hodges is in the chat. Good to see you, man. Popping in, hanging out with the gang. I see Chris is here. By the way, we're getting near the end of this, and now I don't think I necessarily have enough time to properly go in and really do another pass on the study the way I want to. So I think I'm gonna go through and get caught up on the chat comments, and then we'll wrap it up, because I don't think I've got enough time to go in here and do more on this. Let's see here. Yeah, Mighty Geek Studios says painted comics are interesting, which I absolutely agree. I love me some painted comics. Whether it's Bill Sienkiewicz or Scott Hampton, Bo Hampton. I wonder if the Hildebrandt brothers ever did any interiors. I feel like they only painted a lot of comics like modern masterwork cards. I don't know if they ever painted any comics, but yeah, I did. Dave McKean. There's tons of I love painted comics as well. Let's see here. Oh, Chris says I tried to catch you earlier, and here we are. Well, I started a few minutes late, so you might have come on after my normal start time, but I wasn't up yet. So you're like, well, what's up with this guy? And then, popped on. So sorry about that. I was trying to gather the reference for these studies. Let's see here. Mighty Geek says, I have yet to see a comic book in soft pastels or oil pastels. Well, I bet if you were to Google oil pastel comic book, somebody has to have done it, because people have done comics in every medium. In fact, I'm sure there's people who have done comic books where they've done it with puppets. Well, I mean, I can tell you for a fact, I know that Dave McKean has used like physical maquettes and photographed them, not for an entire story, but he's done it definitely for parts of books. And he may have done it for the entirety of some of his children's book work. I have not read any of those, so I would need to go and look. Let's see here. Herman says, "Word. I think I'm better in traditional style in order to do comics work, or maybe do ink and ink wash techniques." And I still come back to the fact that I am tempted to go back to every time I see a nice brush ink thing, I keep thinking, am I messing up by trying to do a comic digital? But this series is an experiment. I still want to go back to doing traditional comics. Huh. Now, Paul, why you got to troll me like this? Why are you trolling, Paul? He says, what about a comic strictly in the abstract style of Jackson Pollock? All right. You know what, man? You got me. You got me on that one, Paul. I don't gotta come back for that one. I think that it could be, if I were to take the question seriously, I think it could be done, but it would be a very non sequitur comic. It would be a very, very bizarre existential experience, but I think it could be done. Let's see. Herman says, exactly, G. I tend to forget it's art and people like art, but it's scary when you want to create, but you also have to make a living. I was thinking about doing game art for arcade sticks, using different styles like painterly or comic book style, just trying different things. Yeah, I mean, making a living as a creative person can be incredibly gratifying, but it's also, I mean, like for instance, one of the things that I find challenging is that for me, I am not as fast as I think I'm nowhere near as fast as a monthly comic book artist should be. Because of that, how longer it takes me, even though Marvel and DC aren't screaming for me, no one's knocking down my door to do it. But I almost feel like because I'm not as fast as I should be, it's really the idea of doing comics for other companies, working for other writers, doing it for other publishers. I don't necessarily want to do it because I feel like I have a limited amount of comics in me in terms of the amount of time that I can put to do it. And I really, really want the stuff to be the stuff that I want to tell. So instead I fall back on other things, more graphic design, product design, packaging design, other things that I can do faster and make my living that way. So I'm still doing something that's creative that I enjoy doing. But it's really, really, it's really hard. I agree. I hear you. Herman says, in terms of the tech support, he says, that's what I'm doing. My AI is named Albert Ingalls. He says he helps me out a lot. I named him because he's cool with it. I should ask my AI what it wants me to call it. Let's see here. Oh, Mighty Geek says, those who get into comics don't do so to become rich. True. Well, I mean, I would say the people that were back in the original like golden age, 40s, 50s illustrators, they were doing it because it's like if they couldn't get high-end magazine illustration work, they're like, well, I'll take whatever I could get, and it was a paycheck. Yeah, I don't think they did to get rich. I think they did it to get a living. But I think now we definitely live in an era of having the privilege of being able to make art solely because you are passionate about it and want to make it, even while still working a job to make a living, doing whatever else we have to do to make a living. Paul says, I sort of had to confront a coworker with a very uncomfortable situation, use ChatGPT to write an email, and said, I think it went well, better than if I had written it myself. You know what? It honestly, it really is good at doing things like that. I've found that anytime I have something that I'm like, anytime I have a sense of dread and I'm like, I don't want to do this, I usually will, that's when I will turn to those tools to help me come up with some sort of solution. See here, Dylan says, I'm not the biggest fan of black and white, although I enjoy manga. Well, you know what? I mean, there's a reason why most mainstream comics are in color. Most people do enjoy color. And the fact of the matter is that it's not like I think black and white comics are a hill that I want to die on. It's also the fact that my sense of color is not that great. And I definitely feel like if I were to work with a colorist, I would want to work with someone that I could pay and compensate fairly for their skills. And I don't have the budget for that. So that's the other reason for going and sticking with black and white, because it would take me so much longer to do color. It's not necessarily that I'm like black and white colors are the superior format. Most people prefer color comics. I get that. I like it. But I mean, it's also like people who like old films or black and white films. Personal taste. That's one of the things I love about art in general, is that it's fine that art is subjective because there's so many different kinds of it. So there's something somewhere you can find something that suits your taste. Let's see here. Herman says, yeah, Paul, I bounce back with Albert about situations that need to be said more clearly. I do that with work, but I only have the AI give sound advice. Now, art, that's different. Let's see here. Dylan says, I love color. However, I love Topi and Mignola's black and white work. Yeah, see, well, that's good. You're open-minded to it. You like color, but when you recognize quality work in black and white, you appreciate it. And I think that's a very fair approach to take, because there's lots of things that may not be my genre, but if I see a really well executed version of it, I'm like, well, I can appreciate that. Let's see here. Paul says, thanks for the stream again, Jeremy. Always around time for my Sunday afternoon. Said, by the way, what's the status of your teaching gigs? Is that in the fall? Can you share any details? I can share that it's going to be, let me look on my phone. You would think that I would know. By the way, I need to practice drawing on a large easel, because I noticed I was trying to draw larger in my figure drawing class this week. Just trying to draw larger so that I can put work in front of people, so I can draw in front of people so I can see across the room during the session. So it's going to be Saturday, September 13th. It's going to be from 12:30 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. And it's going to be at the Art Center, Morro Bay, in Morro Bay, California. So if you're near the Central Coast or in San Luis Obispo, sign up, drop by. We'll be doing it then. So, and then I do have another in-person demo that I'm going to be doing in the fall, in December. So that's it for now. In terms of the teaching, and to be honest, it's probably best because I've really not been making as much progress with personal work, and I've been very busy with paying work with clients, and I've also been very busy with all the life changes and the moving. I wish I had time to do more teaching and to dive deeply into that. But right now it's one of those something's got to give kind of things, and I don't have the bandwidth for more. But I appreciate you asking, Paul. So those are going to be in-person teaching events. Both of them are going to be at the Art Center Morro Bay. Gary says, black and white isn't right for every comic project or artist, but for some, it's exactly the right choice. And I've spoken as somebody who does beautiful, amazing black and white comics. For those of you who have not checked out Dinosaurs versus Mars Bots, definitely go over to Gary's channel, go over to his Etsy shop. Pick up the collector's pack he has of all the issues so far, issues 1 through 3. It is a fantastic comic. I've really been enjoying the series so far. I highly recommend it. Let's see here. Herman says, your streams are really important. Not gonna lie, it's helping me mentally, like having an art space with homies. You never know how much you really need support. I am humbled by that, and I'm glad that this provides that for you. I don't get to have as much shop talk with other artists, particularly other comic book artists. I do have an in-person figure drawing class that I go to once a week, but talking with people that are more illustration and comics, and I think also the fact that we're in this kind of art struggle together, where we're all making stuff, but we're all also trying to level up and continue to increase and grow our skills. Being able to hang out together and talk about that, it's helpful for me too, but it is humbling and gratifying to be able to create a space for other people to feel the same way. So I'm glad that it's helping you. Thank you so much for telling me that. And hey, Herman said, hit that like button. So everybody, hit that like button. If you're new and you're watching, hit that subscribe button. If you've got friends that you think would enjoy these kind of conversations, hit that share button. Share that with them. So let's see here. Herman says, 2 jobs in graphic design, sent me emails 2 weeks ago. My email was jacked up. I may still send them my resume and application. I think it's like clothing design. It's like, hey, definitely, hit them up, get on that email and get that over. I mean, hell, do it off of your phone, but yeah, get that money. And hey, my buddy Dan Plagle, great to see you. He says, hello, friend. I've not talked to Dan in a good hot minute. I'm gonna check in with you, and when you're feeling up for it, hopefully maybe we can have you on the stream again sometime. Just see how things are going. But good to see you, Dan. All right, so we are caught up on all of the comments on the stream. I may come back and do more of these studies next week. Part of the reason why I did this is because it's time. Oh, I forgot to tell you, I buried the lead. So the cover. Wait, no, I didn't bury the lead because I think I showed you guys the cover to the comic that how I, for the most part, was done with the cover, but I wasn't happy with the face. But I realized we did talk about that because I started working on the new face last week and I didn't get very far. Well, part of the reason why I was doing the value studies today is because I need to start doing the actual like fine-tuning the breakdown for the script for this comic so I can start drawing layouts during the stream. Or drawing, well, thumbnails and roughs for the issue. And I wanted to get that, I didn't have time to do any writing this week. I'm probably not going to have any time to do any writing next week. So that was why, one of the reasons why I thought, well, hey, I wanted to do a video on those value studies. So given the fact that I crashed and burned on this first attempt, and I have reference that I have pulled for other attempts, maybe we'll come back and we'll do this. I'll come back and do another pass on this next week and then dive into a different one as well. But, and Paul says, dude, I love that cover. It looks great to me. Thanks, man. I really, really appreciate it. All right, guys, on that note, let me go back to my big old head, and I will tell you that if you enjoy these live streams, like to get additional bonus live streams twice a month, you can become a Patreon subscriber for as little as $2 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI. If you'd like to get a free digital sketchbook, work in progress animated GIFs, blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what inspires me creatively, you can sign up for my free newsletter at substack.com/@Jeremy. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comic books, or if you read digitally on Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. They'll forward you to my Amazon author page. You can pick up books like my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It is a standalone psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. Or you can pick up my most recent project, Morning Star. It is a retelling of Lucifer's Fall from Heaven as a Western. It's an 8-issue series. Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains a conclusion, issues 5 through 8. Both volumes have extensive back matter, character designs, thumbnails, page layouts, script excerpts, photo reference. I basically show you how I put the entire comic book together. So, and if you want to check them out, you can go to the homepage of my YouTube channel and scroll down to the flip throughs playlist, and there are book flip throughs. You can see what's inside before you pick it up. All right, guys, again, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for all the comments, spending time, the encouragement. Greatly appreciate you guys. That's it for now. Go be creative.